It was 3 a.m. when I found myself crawling across the kitchen floor, blood dripping from my mouth, begging my father to make him stop. Jack's fists kept coming, faster, harder, like he was trying to erase me. I looked up, searching for my mother's eyes, but she just stood there, arms crossed, unmoved. This wasn't the first time, but it would be the last. For years, I believed I deserved it. For years, I called it love. But something shattered inside me that night, and when it broke, something else woke up. I'm going to tell you exactly what they did, and why they'll never do it again. I used to believe my family was like a photograph, perfectly framed, brightly lit, and frozen in time. We were the Holloways, the suburban dream. Dad was a church deacon, Mom ran charity drives, and Jack and I were always dressed just right, smiling at holiday dinners no matter what had happened an hour before. If you looked from the outside, you'd see stability, love, respect. You'd never guess how tightly that frame was holding everything in. I was the quiet one, the rule follower. Straight A student, never skipped class, never drank, never even kissed a boy until college. And even then, it was something I told no one. Jack was the opposite. Loud, angry, wild. He got suspended twice in high school for fighting, once for bringing weed into gym class. But he was the golden child, and I was just there. When he lashed out, Mom would say, "Boys go through things." When I cried, Dad would frown and say, "Don't be dramatic." My bedroom was small, just enough space for a twin bed and a desk. The walls were plastered with awards, debate champion, science fair ribbons, perfect attendance. But no one ever asked me about them. They were wallpaper. Jack's room, meanwhile, was practically a shrine. Trophies from middle school baseball he quit sophomore year. Photos of him and Dad at some campout I wasn't invited to. When guests came over, Mom always opened his door, never mine. Family dinners were a weekly performance. My mother would spend hours cooking, then brag, "We're one of the few families who still sit down together." I'd pass the peas, listen to Jack complain about his boss or girlfriend or bad luck. Then, like clockwork, someone would bring up college. I'd say I was thinking of applying to grad school, and Jack would slam his fork down or say something outrageous like, "Why bother? You'll just die alone with your books." And suddenly, the conversation would pivot. Mom would rub his shoulder. Dad would sigh. And I'd sit there, holding mashed potatoes invisible. Once, during one of those dinners, Jack knocked over a glass of red wine, straight onto my open laptop. I gasped, instinctively pulling it away, but the damage was done. Years of notes, essays, and job applications ruined. I burst into tears. Dad stood up, furious. "Jane, why would you put something so important near drinks?" I looked at Jack, who didn't even say sorry. He just smirked. Mom handed me a dish towel and whispered, "Maybe next time, keep your things out of the way." Later that night, I heard her on the phone. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the walls were thin. No, Jane's always been different. Doesn't really feel like mine sometimes. Maybe it's because I had her after I thought I was done. Accidents change people. I didn't sleep at all. Every time I accomplished something, Jack fell apart a little more. And somehow, that always stole the spotlight. When I got accepted into a competitive research program, Jack crashed his car. When I was nominated for valedictorian, he overdosed on sleeping pills. It didn't matter whether it was intentional or not. What mattered was that he needed them more than I did. Every celebration turned into a crisis intervention. I started dreading success. I started sabotaging myself. One afternoon, as I walked home from class, our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Grant, stopped me at her gate. She was holding a photo in a cracked silver frame. It was old, slightly faded, with 3 children in it. I only recognized 2, Jack and a smaller girl who wasn't me. "You look so much like her," she said gently. "Who?" "Your sister." She smiled sadly. "The first girl. I remember when they brought you home. It was strange, you know. So soon after, well, no one ever really explained what happened to Emily." The name hit me like cold water. Emily? I didn't have a sister. I'd never heard that name in my life. They don't talk about her, I know, but you should ask your mother. Some things shouldn't stay buried. That night, I went searching through the family albums. I flipped past birthdays and Christmases, always the same lineup: Mom, Dad, Jack, and me. But when I reached the photo labeled Family Picnic Summer 1995, I froze. There we all were, except I was off to the side, cropped awkwardly, almost cut out. My smile was half gone, sliced by the edge of the picture. And standing in the center, between Jack and Mom, was a girl with light hair and a wide grin. Someone I'd never seen before. Someone who looked just like me. I started locking my bedroom door. It didn't make a difference. Jack would still bang on it at night, sometimes drunk, sometimes angry, always looking for something to take. One night, I caught him rifling through my drawers. When I confronted him, he pushed me against the wall and wrapped his hand around my neck. His breath reeked of whiskey. I couldn't speak. I just stared at him, frozen, feeling my pulse under his thumb. He whispered, "You act like a victim so much, I figured I'd give you something real to cry about." The next morning, I had bruises blooming like violets on my collarbone. Mom saw them. She made me wear a scarf before church. "People gossip," she said. "Don't embarrass us." When I told her what happened, she didn't ask if I was okay. She just sighed and said, "Well, you've always known how to provoke him. You're not entirely innocent, Jane. Remember that time in high school you called him pathetic? Words cut deeper than fists." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But every time I packed a bag, Dad would find a way to guilt me back in. "God gave us family for a reason," he'd say. "It's not right to abandon blood. That's not what good daughters do." He'd sit me down in the living room with his Bible, read scripture about obedience, about forgiveness, about sacrifice. Then he'd hug me, too tight, and say, "We're doing our best, honey. Jack's struggling. He needs us." I began to wonder if I was imagining things. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I had provoked Jack. Maybe Mom was right. Maybe Dad's prayers were the only thing holding us all together. Maybe this was what families did, hurt each other and then pretend they didn't. I remember standing in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing my hair, staring into my own eyes like I was trying to find proof of my own sanity. And for the first time, I looked straight into the lens of my phone's camera and whispered, "If you ever thought you were going crazy, you're not alone." The lies started to multiply. Jack began borrowing my laptop when I was at school. I didn't think much of it until I was called into the dean's office. They'd received an anonymous email from my student account accusing a professor of sexual misconduct. The accusations were graphic, serious, and completely fabricated. I was suspended pending investigation. I cried. I begged them to believe me. But the email came from my device, my IP address, my name. I came home shaking, holding the letter of suspension. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping tea like nothing happened. When I told her, she didn't even blink. "Well," she said, folding her napkin, "maybe you shouldn't be giving people reasons to doubt your behavior." "Jack did this," I said. "He used my laptop. He set me up." She narrowed her eyes. "Even if that were true, which I doubt, what do you expect us to do?" "He's fragile, Jane. You know how he gets. He's had it harder than you. He's been struggling since Emily." There it was again. That name. Emily. "You've never told me about her," I said. "Because it's not your business," she snapped. "She's gone. That's all that matters. Now stop looking for things to blame." Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I went into Dad's office, carefully, quietly, and turned on his old desktop. I knew his passwords. He never changed them, just habit. I typed in Jesus Whitetine 74 and started searching. There it was, a folder marked Estate. Inside, documents assigning power of attorney, accounts, trusts, a will. Everything was being transferred to Jack. On paper, I was listed as a co-owner. But digging deeper, I saw it, clauses giving him full access, full control. My name was decoration, a front. If anything happened to our parents, I'd be left with nothing but the illusion of inclusion. The next file stopped me cold. EmilyMedical.pdf. I opened it. It was a hospital report. Dated July 22, 1998. Diagnosis: cranial trauma. Age: 7. Cause: fall from second-story stairs, accompanied by note: sibling play, accidental. Witness: Jack Holloway, age 9. My fingers trembled. The last line of the report was circled. No signs of external abuse reported. But there was a footnote, a nurse's comment, handwritten. Patient seemed fearful. Repeated phrase: Jack said don't tell. I sat there in the dark, unable to breathe. Emily wasn't some mystery. She was my sister. She was real, and she had died. And they had buried her memory like a body they hoped would never be found. I shut the computer. I stared into the black screen, my own face barely reflected back. I wasn't just a scapegoat. I was a placeholder, a second attempt, a replacement for something broken, or maybe something Jack broke, and they had let him get away with it once. Who's to say they wouldn't let it happen again? The clock read 3:08 a.m. when I woke up to the sound of glass breaking. My bedroom door flung open, hitting the wall so hard it shook the frame. Jack stood there, shirtless, wild-eyed, holding an empty bottle in one hand. He reeked of sweat and bourbon. "Where's the money?" he growled. "What money?" I asked, still half asleep, heart racing. "You're hiding something," he slurred. "Dad's moving it. I saw your name on the account." He lunged before I could speak. I tried to dodge, but he grabbed me by the hair and slammed my head against the floor. I screamed. He didn't stop. His fists landed like hammer blows, shoulder, ribs, face. I scrambled, slipping in my own blood as I crawled toward the hallway. "Dad!" I screamed. "Please! He's going to kill me!" From the bottom of the stairs, I saw them. My father, standing in the foyer in his bathrobe. My mother, arms folded, watching from the kitchen doorway. For a moment, I thought they might run to me, finally intervene. "Help me!" I cried. Dad's eyes didn't blink. "Just give him what he wants, Jane. You always escalate things." Mom looked away, not at me, not at Jack, just away. She didn't even reach for the phone. Jack kicked me once more, hard, and everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed. The lights overhead were too white, too still. My wrists were bruised, my lip was split, my head throbbed. But worst of all, I couldn't remember what exactly had happened. Not really. Just flashes, pain, screaming, silence. A nurse stood nearby, checking my IV. "Your parents said you had a fall," she said softly. "A fall?" She didn't answer, just nodded once, then left the room. Later, when I was stable, a social worker came in. She asked questions. I tried to answer, but everything came out jumbled. I couldn't even remember the moment I passed out. She nodded like she understood, but I saw the doubt in her eyes. A week later, I was transferred. Not home. Somewhere quieter. More secure, they said. It was a facility outside town. Clean, quiet, sterile. The walls were white, the furniture soft. My room had no locks. Mom had signed the paperwork. Involuntary psychiatric hold. "For your safety," the doctors said. They diagnosed me with dissociative episodes, suggested I had harmed myself and repressed the memory. No one mentioned Jack. No one asked why I had bruises in the shape of fists. I started to wonder. Maybe I had fallen. Maybe I had blacked out and imagined the attack. Maybe my brain, in trying to survive, had made up a villain. Then Clara arrived. She was in the room next to mine, pale, with tangled curls and quiet eyes. She didn't speak for days. Just sat in the sunroom, folding and unfolding paper cranes. One afternoon, I caught her staring at me. "You're Jane Holloway," she said. I nodded cautiously. "I knew you looked familiar." "From where?" Her lips twitched. "Your brother and I used to date." My blood ran cold. "He never mentioned you." "No," she said. "He wouldn't." Over the next week, Clara opened up, slowly, carefully. She told me about the way Jack had charmed her at church events, then isolated her from friends. The way he'd scream when she tried to leave. How one night he hurt her so badly she had to be hospitalized, but her complaints were dismissed. The Holloways were respected, and Clara was labeled unstable, attention-seeking. Her reputation was destroyed. "They made me out to be a liar," she said. "They threatened my family. My scholarship disappeared. I disappeared." "Why are you here now?" I asked. She reached into her book and pulled out a photograph. It was grainy, slightly blurred, but unmistakable. It was me. Face swollen, eyes barely open, blood on my shirt, time-stamped at 3:27 a.m., the night of the attack. "I got this from someone at the hospital," Clara said. "They wanted me to have it. I think they felt guilty." I stared at the image. My mind recoiled. I didn't remember this. At all. "That's not real," I whispered. Clara's voice was soft. "It is. How do you have this? Why do you—" "Because I needed you to see it," she said. "Because I know what they do to girls who try to leave." I stared at the photo again. I wanted to say it wasn't me, that it was doctored, that I had imagined everything, but the truth was I couldn't deny what I didn't remember. My head ached, my throat burned. Something inside me cracked, not from pain, but from doubt. If I couldn't trust my own memory, then what else had they stolen from me? Therapy felt like learning to breathe after years underwater. At first, I didn't trust it. I spoke in half-truths, watched the therapist's eyes for judgment, waited for the moment she'd side with them. But she didn't. She asked questions no one had ever asked before. Not, "What did you do?" but, "How did that make you feel?" Not, "Why didn't you fight back?" but, "What stopped you from leaving?" She never told me I was overreacting. She never told me Jack was just confused. She called it what it was: abuse. With Clara's help, I began writing. We kept journals together, side by side in the courtyard. At first, I wrote about the obvious things: Jack's anger, my parents' silence, the night at 3 a.m. But soon, the words dug deeper. Images came back. Dreams, maybe. Maybe memories. I saw stairs, screaming, a little girl's voice, my own voice. One entry changed everything. I saw her fall. My hand froze over the page. I didn't remember writing that, but there it was, in my own handwriting. I saw her fall. I didn't push her, but I saw, and I didn't tell. I wasn't even 5 years old. Jack told me not to speak. He said Emily would be fine. He said if I told, they'd send me away. He said Mom would be heartbroken, and it would be my fault. And then, just like that, the memory slammed back into me. Emily on the landing, clutching a doll. Jack angry, shouting. A shove, her foot slipping. The sound of bone against wood. I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't forgotten on my own. I'd been forced to forget, told to forget, conditioned to believe that silence was love. That night, I stood in the mirror of my hospital room and looked into my own eyes. Really looked. No scarf, no makeup, no distraction. Just me. They made me forget. Now, I remember everything. When the doctors asked if I felt ready to return home, I smiled and nodded. I said all the right things. Yes, I understand now. I overreacted. I'm feeling much better. I even hugged my mother when she arrived. She hugged me back like nothing had happened. Like I was a recovered patient instead of a girl crawling out of a grave. The house was colder than I remembered. Jack wasn't around. Off at some rehab, they claimed. Dad patted my shoulder, told me he was proud I'd seen the light. I told him I wanted to help now, that I was ready to take on more responsibility. He smiled like a general welcoming a soldier home. The first thing I did was plant cameras. Small ones, hidden behind books, tucked into vents. I replaced my laptop, installed remote backups. I recorded everything. Every phone call, every argument, every casual cruelty. I knew I only had one shot, and I wasn't going to waste it. I hacked into the family accounts, not to steal, but to see. The paper trail was clear. Money shifted, names changed, legal documents adjusted. Jack was the primary heir. I was a legal accessory, a fallback. I documented every file, every clause. Then I wrote a letter, not to my parents, but to the world. It started with the photo Clara gave me, then the video Jack once deleted. But I found a trace version on an old external hard drive. I paired it with audio of my mom saying, "I can't go through this again. If she leaves, I'll kill myself." I stitched together the pieces, the bruises, the documents, the journal entries. I uploaded it all, to the cloud, to the police, to a lawyer I'd found through Clara's contacts. Then, something unexpected happened. One of the hashtags I used, @scapegoat survivor, was picked up by an international advocacy group. They reached out privately, offered resources, legal aid, protection. They called me brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt awake. Still, I knew it wasn't over. One night I came home to find Dad sitting in the dark, the glow of a tablet lighting his face. He didn't look up when I entered. "So that's what you've been doing?" he asked. "Recording us? Plotting?" "I protected myself," I said. "You've shamed this family. Your mother's in hysterics. Jack's been kicked out of his program. Do you understand what you've done?" "I understand exactly what I've done," I said. "I've told the truth." His voice dropped low. "You think this is over? I'll have you committed again. This time for good. No judge will stop me." I didn't flinch. "You might try, but this time you're not the only one holding the pen." He stood, towering over me, eyes burning. For a moment, I thought he might hit me. But he didn't. He just turned, walked away. I stood there in the quiet, pulse steady, breath even. Let him come. Let them all come. I was done hiding. I released everything. The video, the recordings, the hospital files, the audio of my mother's threats, the bruises, my journals, Emily's death report, the will, the faked emails, Clara's testimony, everything. I didn't just upload it, I narrated it. I looked into the camera and told the world what it was like to bleed in silence while your abuser got praised at church potlucks. I named names. I called it by what it was: abuse, cover-up, generational dysfunction dressed in pearls and Bible verses. Within hours, the video had gone viral. Comments flooded in, strangers, survivors, allies. Some called me brave, some called me dramatic. But the truth was out, and it was spreading. Scapegoat Survivor started trending within a day. News outlets picked up the story. Articles ran headlines like "The Holloway Hoax" and "Behind the Suburban Smile." People who once praised my parents now posted shock and disgust. Old friends reached out, some to apologize for not seeing it, some to ask how they missed the signs. I didn't reply. Not yet. Then came the real break. A woman named Teresa messaged anonymously through the advocacy group. She used to work for our family as a housekeeper. She asked for a call. When we spoke, her voice trembled. "I have a daughter," she said. "She used to come with me to your house sometimes after school. Quiet girl, loved puzzles." I didn't remember her. I said so. "You wouldn't," she said. "You were always in your room." But Jack, he noticed her. One day she came home crying. She wouldn't talk. Then she started wetting the bed, screaming at night. She never said what happened. I didn't know. I didn't connect it until I saw your video. My stomach turned. "I went to the police once," Teresa continued. "They brushed me off. Said Jack was a good boy. Said I had no proof." Her voice cracked. "But I kept a copy of her old journal. There's a page. She drew him. Named him. It matches your timeline." I thanked her. I sent her information to my lawyer. By week's end, the story had transformed from a family drama to a legal case. The FBI launched an investigation, not just into my family, but into the psychiatric facility that held me. Clara came forward publicly. Other survivors trickled in, former girlfriends, classmates, even a retired therapist who'd been silenced. One name kept surfacing: Dr. Langford, the man who had signed off on my involuntary hold. The same man who'd once counseled Jack privately. They found bank transfers, a string of donations from my father to Langford's foundation. It was enough to warrant a raid. Jack was arrested first. He was found at a motel 2 towns over, strung out and screaming. My father was taken in for questioning. My mother tried to call me. I let it go to voicemail. When I finally listened, it was just her breath, ragged and unsteady. "You killed this family, Jane," she whispered. "I hope you're happy." No, I thought. I didn't kill anything. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already dead. Court proceedings began within the month. Jack was charged with assault, sexual misconduct, fraud, and obstruction. My father lost his position at the church and was stripped of legal authority over any estate. My mother stopped appearing in public altogether. People stopped calling us the Holloways. We became a warning, a case study, a myth unraveling in real time. Reporters came. Advocates rallied. I gave statements but refused interviews, not until the sentencing. That day, I stood in the courthouse lobby, staring into a sea of microphones. "There are families like mine everywhere," I said. Good reputations, polished smiles, but underneath, fear, control, silence. What happened to me isn't rare. What's rare is that I lived to name it. The crowd was silent. "I used to think I was broken," I continued, "that I caused all of it. But the truth is, I survived a system designed to make me forget who I was. I'm not a victim anymore, and I'm not the only one." That night, I walked past my childhood home. The windows were dark, the lawn overgrown. A for sale sign leaned crooked in the dirt. The past was still there, but it couldn't reach me now. I went home to an apartment with tall ceilings and no secrets. Then came the letter. No return address. Handwritten. No signature. "You don't know me, but I think we might be sisters. They said I was adopted, that I didn't belong. But I remember things too. I remember the stairs." My hands shook. "If you want to talk, I think I've been waiting a long time to hear from you." I never went back. Not to the house, not to the church, not to the street where the mailbox still bore our name. I changed mine. I changed everything. Jane Holloway became Jane Ellis, not to hide, but to finally exist. I began telling my story not through trauma, but through purpose. It started with a podcast. I called it The Hollow Truth. A cruel little pun, maybe. But it stuck. Each episode opened with survivors like me, people who'd been labeled difficult, dramatic, damaged. People who'd been scapegoated, gaslit, erased. And then came the letters. Thousands. From women in similar homes. From sons raised by narcissists. From daughters blamed for their brother's rage. Some of them whispered through emails. Others came crying through DMs. But all of them carried the same core ache. I thought I was the only one. The podcast turned into a book. Then two. Then lectures, panels, speaking tours. I got certified in trauma counseling, then partnered with therapists to build support networks across the country. I never told survivors what to do. I simply gave them the mic and said, "We believe you." Clara was beside me through it all. We built The Hollow Truth into a nonprofit, support groups, advocacy, legal aid. She handled logistics. I handled stories. We made a good team. More than that, we healed in tandem. Some nights we'd lie in bed, both wide awake at 3 a.m., not from fear anymore, but from passion, talking about what else we could do. What was next? When we were invited to Paris for an international summit on trauma-informed systems, they called me a global voice for survivors. I stood under the glass dome of a European embassy, holding an award engraved with my name. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just looked into the crowd and felt a strange, steady quiet. I was proud, not of the pain, but of what I built from it. Then came the letter. It was forwarded through my attorney, a medical facility, psychiatric, out of state. My mother had been admitted, severe disassociation, paranoia, hallucinations. The letter wasn't from her. It was from a nurse. Apparently, my name was the only one she repeated, over and over. "Where's Jane? Where's my girl?" I didn't mean to. They thought I should know. I folded the paper once, then again, then slid it into a drawer. I didn't feel joy or vindication. I felt empty. But maybe that was the point. I wasn't waiting for justice anymore. I wasn't waiting for her to see me. I had already seen myself. Years passed. Seasons shifted. The podcast grew. The book became a bestseller. I declined interviews with tabloids. I turned down documentaries. I refused to be framed as a spectacle. This wasn't tragedy porn, it was testimony. Eventually, Clara and I bought land in a small coastal town. No big city noise, no media buzz. We built a house with tall windows, lots of sun. I planted rosemary by the porch. She painted the walls a soft sage green. There was no sign on the mailbox, no clue who we were before. One afternoon, I sat outside with a cup of tea, watching the neighborhood kids ride their bikes down the hill. They laughed, freely, loudly. One of them fell, scraped his knee, then got right back up. No one yelled, no one hit. A mother called from a porch, "You okay, sweetie?" And the boy smiled. "I'm fine." I watched that moment and felt my throat tighten. Those kids would not be silenced like I was. They would scream and fall and laugh and live, and no one would call them dramatic for it. I wiped my cheek before the tear could fall, sipped my tea, and whispered, "Good." Later that evening, I stood in the home studio where I recorded every episode of The Hollow Truth. I set the mic, adjusted the gain, cleared my throat. Today was special. It would be the final episode. I didn't script it. I spoke from the center of my chest. This story began with silence, I said, and it ends with choice. Not everyone gets a happy ending, but everyone deserves a real one. I paused. Let the silence settle. I'm not the girl they told me I was. I'm not the villain of their story or the problem they whispered about. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm free. I let that last word breathe. Then I leaned in, voice softer now. You didn't just watch my story. You remembered yours. And that means you're still here. That means there's time. That means something inside you survived. Click. I ended the recording. Not with applause. Not with music. Just truth.